mattress with front sight or my pillow with front sight.
All right.
And I need to swap out a couple SAF 60-second spots for the Sunday program. Man, it didn't take you long to get that one put in today. Jeez.
No, and I've been crammed for time with everything else, being a little short-handed with Greg being out, but got to get it done when you can.
I mean, you got that done within seconds. I just caught you at the right time.
Yes.
Good. It worked for me. So what's with this Cumulus stuff, telling talk hosts over there not to talk about the election and stolen? Have you heard about that?
Yeah, just what I've been able to read in the trades. I haven't spoken to anybody at any of those stations.
Has Salem put anything out?
Commenting on that or having their own hosts not allowed to talk about? No, not that I've heard or seen.
That's pretty stifling. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is, and I don't know if that's partially panic mode and or, potential lawsuit mode. I don't know.
Yeah, well, keep me in the loop on that if you hear something, okay?
Yeah, if I hear anything else, I'm sure they're just worried.
They're what?
Like everybody, just worried like everybody else.
Yeah, well,
something will come back and bite them that they're, not even aware of.
Yeah, well, if you see anything in the trades that I missed, let me know, okay?
Sure will.
Yeah, just let me know when we have 30 seconds before so I can run the, and, coming into each break and then 30 seconds going out.
Gotcha.
Roger that. Down 4,000 Twitter followers and still dropping, Jim.
Yeah, there's always a chance some of those you didn't need.
There's always a chance I don't need Twitter. It's a hateful place, man. I was over there today. Yeah. I try, and you go and you look at some of these things that are trending, and the hate fueling on that place is just incredible. It's infuriating.
All right, we're about 30 seconds from starting.
Roger that.
This is Armed American Radio's Daily Defense.
Armed American Radio's Daily Defense, because they don't want me to, that's why I do it.
Presented by X Insurance. X Insurance. From the gunbroker.com studios on the Crossbreed Holsters Platinum microphone.
They're never going to stop us here.
It's 2021, and we're in a new decade. Here is your host, the loudest conservative voice in America fighting the enemies of freedom, Mark Walters.
Buckle in today. This is going to be a great program. I promise you, you will love this. This will be a program that I will probably repeat at some point in time on a monster broadcast because it's going to be that good. I'm telling you that in advance. First, let me give a shout out to some new folks. I'm seeing some, if you're watching on the live stream, and there are some new names in here. I see from Hilliard, Florida, Sherry in Hilliard, Florida. Great to see you here, Sherry. Randy from Oklahoma. Wraith, I hope I'm not butchering the name. Wraith, is that right? Randolph from, Wraith and Nelson, I'm sorry, from Minnesota, and some others in there. I appreciate it. So thanks, you guys, for jumping in here. Make sure to comment, and I see the comments as they're coming through, and as we're going through what's going to be a history lesson today, that you're going to see some parallels between 1856 and today. I love talking about this. I've written about this. I'm a student of this particular point in American history, and I got to be honest with you, what I'm seeing is frightening. But first, welcome inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense here in the gunbroker.com studios on this Crossbreed Holsters Platinum microphone. And every bit of this today, this lesson is being presented to you by X Insurance. By the way, I will be down in Immokalee, Florida. I'll tell you more about that coming up throughout the hour with X Insurance at the FIRE, the Fire. I'll tell you all about it. It's at a very cool range down there. It's open to the public. You're welcome to come. I'll give you more information as the show progresses. Have you ever heard of the Crime Against Kansas speech? Have you ever heard about that? It is a fascinating part of American history, and it occurred on May 19th in 1856 in the old Senate chamber, where the temperature had reached well up into the 90s. It was hot, and the Senate chamber was filled beyond capacity because the nation was furiously debating entering of the Union, Kansas, as a free state or a slave state. And the Democrats were arguing fervently for Kansas to enter the Union as a slave state because that's the Democrat Party history that they don't want you to know. But we're going to remind you about it today and remind them about it. And if you're a Democrat, I'm going to remind you about your party's history that they don't want you to know about. That occurred, that speech, on May 19th, 1856. But before we get started with that, I want to tell you a little bit about the actors, the players who were involved in that 1856 dust-up. And the first one was, so if you're watching, you can see him behind me here to the right. I've got a photograph, an actual photograph of Senator Sumner. Senator Sumner did not live that long. He was born in 1811. He died in 1874. He lived, I guess, a full life, particularly when you consider what happened to him and the time in history that he was alive. But he was a statesman. He was a United States senator. He was from Massachusetts, of all places. Now, think about this in today's terms. A Republican, anti-slavery in Massachusetts. My, how we flip things around in this country, right? But he was a senator, a Republican he was also a lawyer. He was an academician, and he was a great speaker, an orator. He was known for his ability to speak so eloquently. And if you go back to, 1800s, you go back to that century's Oxford English, the way they rap their prose. And you had a guy, and let's give credit where it's due, a guy like Obama who can really rap some words, right? Put that power in that old Oxford English, and you've got somebody that can really think some letters from Lincoln, some Civil War letters home, and so forth. They're very powerful stuff. But he was what was called, in the anti-slavery forces called him, they called themselves, they were the radical Republicans during the American Civil War back in the 1860s. During Reconstruction, Reconstruction being after the war, Sumner fought to minimize and reduce, if you will, the power of the Democrats. He wanted them wiped out. And he wanted the ex-Confederates to guarantee that recently freed men and women and children could live equally. He got into it. It was not uncommon for him. He would dust it up with Grant, which he would do from time to time. At the time, President Grant, okay? He was a guy who had changed parties many times, which was not uncommon back then, because slavery sentiment and sentiment of other issues tended to sway. It was very fluid, very transitional back in the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s. before it finally came in and settled down really, truly as a Republican Party. And he became, as I said, a great orator. He was a statesman. He was an academic. And he was very, very, very highly respected. And that was pretty much the background, just to give you the inside dope a little bit on Senator Sumner from Massachusetts. He was a staunch abolitionist, and he could write and he could speak. So kind of keep that in mind. The other player, and actually there were 4 players in this, but 2 that came to physical blows. The other 2, one was was actually in the chamber, one was not. But the second one, the major player here, was Preston Brooks. Have you ever heard of him? Now, I wouldn't hold it against you if you've never heard of either of these guys. If you've never heard of Senator Sumner, if you've never heard of Brooks, because American history, we don't teach this to our kids anymore. And it's a shame, because where we are today and what I'm going to tell you as this program progresses is going to, if you're a patriot, if you have a patriotic bone in your body, and I know you do if you listen to Armed American Radio, you'll get goosebumps when you hear this story. Preston Smith Brooks, he didn't live real long. He lived from about 1819 to 1857 or 58, if I'm not mistaken. I believe it was 57. He was a member of the House of Representatives, and he was out of South Carolina. He was a Southern Democrat, and he served from 1853 until his resignation in July of 1856. So he had 3 years under his belt. And then this is interesting, because he served again. He was reelected in August of 1856. So think about this. He served from 1853, and then he resigned in July of 1856. Well, what happens when you resign? Your seat is left open. He then ran again for that open seat from which he had resigned. And this is going to be a major part of the story, as we'll dig into in the hour today. But he won re-election to the seat he resigned from. And you'll find why that's part of the history. I don't want to get a hold of myself. Suffice to say, let that sink in. He resigned in July of 1856, and then after the vacancy, he filled his own vacancy. Very strange. But he was a Democrat. He was a strong supporter of slavery, extremely vocal, as was his first cousin, his cousin once removed, Senator Andrew Butler, was his cousin in the Senate. His cousin once removed. Now, that kind of stuff confuses me. Is that first? I thought first cousin. You know, if your cousin has kids, isn't that your second cousin? I don't know how it works. But, forget all that. But he became famous really for nothing other than 2 things. Being a loudmouth supporter of slavery in South Carolina as a Democrat, because it was the Democrat Party that was the party of the Confederacy, and it was the Democrat Party that was the party of slavery. Keep that in mind in today's day and age. I want you to think about these things. But he really was known for nothing more than that, except the incident that I'm going to tell you about. So let's go to the crime against Kansas speech. Those are the 2 major players. You've got a Republican from Massachusetts, Senator Sumner, and you've got a Democrat, pro-slavery, I should say anti-slavery, abolitionist Republican from Massachusetts, pro-slavery Democrat from South Carolina. And that gentleman's name, of course, was Preston Brooks. So those are the 2 major players. So what's the crime against Kansas? What happened there? What's going on there? Well, in 1856, as I said previously, and I'll take this to the break with you, we'll set this up. Kansas the debate was raging in Washington, D.C. to allow Kansas into the Union as a free state or a slave state. And boy, I'll tell you what, tempers were running high. Tempers were running hot. Temperatures themselves were running hot. On May 19th, the temperature reached about close to, from what I understand, it was up over 90 degrees. You can imagine how hot it is in that chamber, dressed the way they were dressed in full garb in the 1800s. No air conditioning. And the gallery was packed because Americans were into this huge debate. It was very passionate. And at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon on May 19th, Senator Sumner got up to give his speech. And get this, it took him 2 months. 2 months, 2 and 2. Remember Chuck Woolery?
30.
By the way, we talked with Chuck Woolery yesterday to bring those guys to the show. It took him 2 months to schedule his floor time. He wasn't going to waste 1 second of it. When we come back, I'm going to tell you what he said in his own words, that even by today's standards, mixed it up a little bit. I mean, you know, you'll believe me, Senator Sumner had it going on. There's a couple people that didn't like it, and it led to some dust-ups. We'll talk about it when we come back. Don't go away.
Once removed is a generation above or below you.
I've never been able to figure that out. And it's really confusing when you look at it on paper. You sit and you try to think,
Well,
that and accounting
father,
went over my head in college.
like your dad's first cousin is your first cousin once removed.
Okay. Who's my second cousin? A cousin's kid?
Yes.
So my first cousin's kid would be a second cousin?
Well, let me see. Yeah,
Confusing
it does get
stuff.
messy, but
Nathan says your cousin's cousin is your second
well.
cousin.
yeah, you're a child of one's parents' first cousin. So if we're back to that
that's
first cousin,
over my head.
Yeah.
A child of one's parents' first cousin. Forget it. I'm done. Okay? I got cousins, and I'll call, if I want to call it a second cousin, that's what I'll call it. Way, way, way too
Or
confusing.
you can call the grandchild of your great uncle or aunt.
Forget it, man. Forget it. You know, this kills me because I failed to hit record in that first segment. That's okay. We got the second, third, fourth going to be recorded. This is great stuff here. Those of you on the boards watching, getting the raw feed, the sausage making in between the breaks, we got Jim Bartow, extraordinaire, on the boards today, producing the show in Greg's absence. All right, let me know when we're close to 30.
We are right there.
On it?
Yes.
This upcoming segment of Armed American Radio is being sponsored by Gunbroker.com, the world's largest online marketplace to buy and sell firearms, ammo, and related accessories. That's Gunbroker.com. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the show indeed. Gunbroker.com has it going on, as do all of our partners here at Armed American Radio. We'll talk about them in just a few moments. But suffice to say, you are in the Gunbroker.com studios with me today for Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. We are on the Crossbreed Holsters studio microphone. I've got some really cool holsters coming from Crossbreed NN8 that I'll be able to show you if you're watching in the next few days, and I'll be able to use one in particular for my 10 millimeter, which I'm really looking forward to getting. And all of this is being presented to you today by X Insurance, which is a far superior AM Best A-rated product. I kid you not. We're done playing games here. All right? I've got homeowners, the best I can get. I've got Geico for my boat, the best and least expensive I could get for my boat at the time. I've got the best life insurance policy I can get. I've got the best healthcare coverage I can get. All of it. All right? I won't play games with my insurance, particularly when my freedom is on the line. And I saw today, I don't even remember who it was, join us and get a free range bag. There's no gimmicks at X. You don't join. You get a policy that covers you for what you need. The policy is written to your needs. For yourself, your business, your toys, all aspects of your life. Please look into this. We are in perilous times in America. X Insurance has your back. Doesn't cost you a dime. Go to xinsurance.com. Plus, the website's like very cool. Wait till you see all the stuff they cover. Jump out of airplanes, covered. Pilot that flies the planes that people jump out of, covered. Own the plane that the pilots fly that people jump out of, covered. You're the guy that people attach themselves to because you tandem jump, covered. Jumping off of whatever you're doing, covered. Climbing rocks, half dome, covered. Okay, X Insurance has you covered. They know how to write policies. They even wrote a policy, believe it or not, for Al Sharpton for a march. I mean, X Insurance is the real deal, so please check them out, okay? xinsurance.com. They cover you if you carry a gun, particularly CCW or whether or not you are law enforcement and have to carry. It doesn't matter. Check them out and get real, get off the gimmicks, grow into a real policy like you have for everything else in your life that matters. All right. The players. I showed you Sumner. There's Sumner. If you're watching, you can see Senator Sumner behind me. I failed to give you Brooks. This is Representative Brooks behind me, if you can see him. I've got photographs up if you want to watch. Facebook.com/Armed American Radio, YouTube.com. You can look for Mark Walters. Go in there and check it out. Many of you do. All right, so those are the two players. Sumner, anti-slavery Republican from Massachusetts. Brooks, pro-slavery Democrat from South Carolina. Crime against Kansas speech. On May 19th at 1 p.m. on a very hot day in a crowded chamber, my boy Sumner rose to speak. It took him 2 months to schedule his floor time. He was a big guy. He was 45 years old, freshman senator at the time. He was 185 pounds, big dude, 6'2". He got up there and he was wearing a light-colored, according to the Senate site, a light-colored English tweed coat and lavender trousers. And he wrote every word of his address. And even by today's standards, he was pretty edgy. Let's go over some of what he wrote. But before entering upon the argument, remember, they're talking about letting Kansas into the Union as a free state or a slave state. He says, I must say something of a general character, particularly in response to what has fallen from senators who have raised themselves to eminence on this floor in championship of human wrongs. He's referring to slavery. I mean, the senator from South Carolina, Mr. Butler, and the senator from Illinois, Mr. Douglas, who, though unlike Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, yet, like this couple, sally forth together in the same adventure, meaning slavery. I regret much to miss the elder senator from his seat. What he means by that is Butler wasn't there, and he wanted him to be there so he could hear him talk about him to his face on the floor of the Senate. All of it being recorded. Of course, recorded meaning at that time, physically being taken down. And he says, I regret much to miss the elder senator from his seat, but the cause against which he has run a tilt with such activity of animosity demands that the opportunity of exposing him should not be lost. And it is for the cause that I speak, meaning freedom. The senator from South Carolina has read many books of chivalry and believes himself a chivalrous knight with sentiments of honor and courage. Of course, he has chosen a mistress to whom he has made his vows, and who, though ugly to others, is always lovely to him, though polluted in the sight of the world, is chaste in his sight. I mean the harlot, slavery. And what he just called him was a slavery pimp on the floor of the U.S. Senate in 1856. That's essentially what he just did. Listen to how he continues to talk about Butler. For her, his tongue is always profuse with words. Let her be impeached in character or any proposition made to shut her out from the extension of her wantonness, and no extravagance of manner or hardihood of assertion is then too great for this senator. The frenzy of Don Quixote on behalf of his wench is all surpassed. This guy's going at him. The asserted rights of slavery, which shock equality of all kinds, are cloaked by a fantastic claim of equality. If the slave states cannot enjoy what, in mockery of the great fathers of the Republic, he misnames equality under the Constitution, in other words, the full power in the national territories to compel fellow men to unpaid toil, to separate husband and wife, and to sell little children at the auction block, then, sir, the chivalric senator will conduct the state of South Carolina out of the Union. This is 1856. Powerful words indeed when you go back into Oxford English and understand what he just said. You're a slavery slut pimp is what he just said. You're a pimp, slavery is your whore. That's what the man said on the floor of the U.S. Senate. Powerful words indeed. Who is Preston Brooks? And how does he get in on this? Preston Brooks was the cousin once removed from Butler, who happened to hear the speech on the floor because Butler wasn't there to get ragged on. And of course, you just heard Sumner in his own words be bummed about that. I wanted him here. Too bad the senior senator isn't here to hear me say these things about him. Now, keep in mind, I don't have time to go through the whole Crime Against Kansas speech, but I would ask that you go and read it. It is fascinating, utterly fascinating. And he also went after the other senator as well. But again, we're focusing now on in the Crime Against Kansas. We're also talking about just these two individuals because it was the dust-up that occurred between these two. So Preston Brooks heard what was going on and decided, I ain't having none of that cuz I don't like what I just heard that man say about my cousin, once removed,
30.
which I found out during the break was the cousin of a cousin. I don't know how all that stuff works. I was no good with that stuff. Still can't figure it out. But when we come back, I'm going to tell you what Preston Brooks had to say about what it was Sumner said about his cousin and slavery. No love lost here, with implications and ramifications today. Back right after this. Tracy Joe Kelleher, I love you. Thanks for being in here. It is a great story. It's a true story. I love telling this from time to time. It fits with where we are today. You go back in. It fits with where we are. You'll soon find out. Bill Blasco says, y'all need to quiet those bumpers, those damn bumpers. I'm going to get me fired. They're not, the volume of the bumpers and all is not any higher than what we're doing in here. It's how it's coming in on your internet, I can promise you. And Brian, the answer to that is yes. Absolutely has been. Thank you, Tracy. Likewise. I remember you coming down the steps at Zakey's. Yep. I was 21 years old, just out of college, in a strange town, at a place called Zakey's on Market Street in downtown York, Pennsylvania. That's when I got transferred there. You look like a long, tall, cool drink of water, girl. To those of you who don't know what I'm talking about here, my girlfriend, a girl that I met and spent time with in York, Pennsylvania, when I first got out of college, is here watching the show today and she's commenting on the boards. Tracy Jo Kelleher. God bless you, Tracy. Oh, Paul, you don't know the rest of the story yet. Stick around. It'll give you goosebumps. Back to the break screen, guys.
$30. Back to Armed American Radio's Daily Defense with Mark Walters.
Indeed, welcome back inside Armed American Radio's Daily Defense. The Gunbroker.com studios. The Crossbreed Holsters microphone lit up. This EVRE20. Powerful stuff. Dozens of radio stations across the country picking us up. We love that. We love our affiliates very much. And all of it, every single bit of it, presented by X Insurance. Before I continue, I want to take you to today's rhetoric. Now, I've got a screen. If you're watching, you'll be able to see this. But you won't be able to read. If you look behind me here on the screen in the studio, you will see 4 very hateful people, very evil people. I don't know who the one in the top left is. I still can't figure it out. But she's the one that I quote, and there's a quote underneath it. There needs to be unrest in the streets, this modern-day Democrat said, with fire and brimstone behind her, because those are U.S. cities burning behind her. And her Democrat rhetoric is there needs to be unrest in the streets. Next to her is your soon-to-be vice president, the very unpopular, couldn't get 1% in the primaries herself, the individual who called Joe Biden, he's a racist, but I'll work for you. Unbelievable. Protesters should not let up, she said, with a microphone and her finger pointing and fires burning behind her. She's the one that also let criminal rioters started a fund to get them out of prison. Below her is the nastiest of the nasty, Nancy Pelosi. I just don't know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, she's saying. Maybe there will be. Maybe there will be. Because, now this is my words. Because it's okay, as long as you agree with me, you can uprise all day long. We'll even get you out of jail. It's Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States. And then the worst of all, Maxine Waters. If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome anywhere anymore. That's Maxine Waters. Hateful words indeed. Keep those in mind as I tell you now the rest of the story. It's a history lesson here. I remind you that, and the other senator that was in there, by the way, was Senator Stephen Douglas from Illinois. He was singled out by Sumner when Sumner looked him directly in his face during his crime against Kansas speech, and he called him, and I quote, a noisome squat and a nameless animal, not a proper model for an American senator, to his face on the floor. And then went on and talked about the slavery mistress, etc., with Andrew Butler, the Democrat slave lover, supporter, the Democrat from South Carolina. 3 days later, because Preston Brooks didn't take kindly to what he heard, to him, those were fighting words. Those were absolute fighting words. So 3 days later, on May 22nd, 1856, Representative Brooks would walk into the U.S. Senate chamber holding a metal-topped cane. He approached Senator Sumner, who was seated and folding his written versions of his crime against Kansas speech for delivery to members of Congress. Keep in mind, at that time, nothing was electronic, so they took everything in print. He folded them up, they put them in envelopes, and they delivered their speeches to the individual senators on the floor. Also keep in mind then that the legislators selected senators too, not you or I. We'll go back to that. That matters here briefly, the later part of the story. But he was putting his written version speech for delivery to members of Congress. At that time, Brooks violently swung the cane down on top of Sumner's head. And here is, according to the official version in the U.S. Senate archives. Moving quickly, Brooks slammed his metal-topped cane onto the unsuspecting Sumner's head. As Brooks struck again and again, Sumner rose and lurched blindly about the chamber, futilely attempting to protect himself. After a very long minute, it ended. Back to my article about it that I wrote. It ended all right. It ended with a sitting U.S. Republican senator violently beaten on the floor of the old chamber, bleeding and beaten within an inch of his life. Brooks, according to reports, get this, calmly exited the Senate chamber and was not taken into custody. On the other hand, Sumner received very much needed medical attention. He survived the vicious attack. And after a lengthy recuperation period of, count my fingers if you're watching, 1, 2, 3 solid years, he would go on to finish an illustrious 18 years as a senator from Massachusetts. Brooks, on the other hand, the Democrat hater with the cane, who was fighting for slavery in 1856 and wanted Kansas admitted to the Union as a slave state, who didn't like the words that a fellow senator from an opposing party had said about his first cousin, or cousin once removed, it doesn't matter, cousin once removed. He was never detained. He was given a slap on the wrist. He was never, ever held legally accountable for his actions. In fact, as I mentioned in the previous segment, he resigned in July of 1856. And he did it so that a special election could take place. And as I mentioned before, he was reelected by his Democrat constituents to fill the slot that opened due to his resignation. Now, that was in November. He died prior to his being able to take the oath again in January. So he never did fill it, but he was reelected. So what about all this? This is a fascinating piece of American history. What does it say? Think about where we are today. And again, if you're watching the show, you can see behind me a very famous rendition of the caning of Senator Sumner. By the way, it is believed that Senator Sumner suffered multiple wounds to the head, that a concussion, and it is believed that he was suffering seizures upon being beaten on the floor of that Senate. Because today, this is important, particularly on a day like today, where we have Democrats filled with hate and rage, that it's not just 8-9 days, they don't want to let it go. They've got to do everything they can to continue the destruction of Donald Trump. Something that they started with their mainstream media helpers back in 2015, when as soon as Donald Trump came rolling down that escalator, it began. Fake everything. Fake dossiers, fake collusion, fake hatred, Russia this, Russia that. Pelosi herself saying that the 2016 election was hijacked. Bet you don't remember that, do you? Because the media is going to leave that out. That's called a lie of omission. As the Democrats themselves called the election stolen. Okay, they're Democrats. Press is on their side. They forget that it's their hate-filled rage that brought us Donald Trump. That it's Hillary Clinton's hate and rage and the Democrats' hate and rage that brought this country Donald Trump. They want you to think it, and their media is going to try to make it all appear now that it's all Trump's fault. This was happening long before Donald Trump. Donald Trump was brought here as a third-party outsider. Don't you ever forget that. So to remind you, as we watch these hate-filled rage-filled, evil maniacs in today's Democrat modern party, socialists we're talking about, lefty actors, professors, fake journalists, elected Democrats such as Waters, Pelosi, Schumer, Ocasio-Cortez, these hateful people, too many others to count, we remind them of their hate-filled legacy. You see, back in 1856, according to the U.S. Senate page, get this, overnight, both men became heroes in their respective regions. Now, I want you to let that sink in. Look at the picture behind me. If you can't see it because you're listening on your radios, let me tell you this. It's a picture of a Democrat leaning over a fallen Republican, beating him over the head with a cane. I want you to remember that. Get that visual. Overnight,
30.
Both men became heroes in their respective regions. You heard that correctly. When we come back, I'll tell you how heroic they actually became. And then we're going to close it out. We're going to slide right into home. And you're going to think, wow, look at what's going on today. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of this history lesson. We'll be back after this. Fascinating stuff. Di, you got to show those faces, don't you? Boy, let's show those faces again, shall we? How about it? Let's do that. The faces of hate. Right here. Faces of hate. Right there. Nasty Panasty Losey. We won, Joe. We did it, Joe. You're going to be the president, Joe. Maxine Waters. People vote for these people. I don't know who that lady is up top left, but I believe she's a commentator. I don't know who she is. Yeah, this show is flying right by, John. I promise you. This is a great lesson. I love covering this story. It's one that needs repeated from time to time. Let's go back to the break screen, guys. How we doing, Jim? We getting close? I lost track of the clock. Sorry about that.
Oh, we're almost there. In about 40 seconds.
Okay.
$30.
The following segment of Armed American Radio is being brought to you by Defender Coffee. When you drink Defender Coffee, you're making a donation to a gun rights organization of your choice that protects and defends your freedoms. Welcome back to the show. Welcome back indeed. I am Mark Walters, filling your prescription for freedom across the country today in these daily DefenseGunBroker.com studios on this Crossbreed Holsters microphone. All of it presented by X Insurance, and I am, in fact, drinking Defender Coffee. I drink it every single day. I can't show you the 5-pound bag I have anymore because, well, we got into the 5-pound bag because we were out of the 1-pound bag. So we're kind of dwindling that one down now. But you can visit DefenderCoffee.com. With every sip of coffee, you can donate to the Second Amendment Foundation or the Gun Owners of America. I, of course, choose to give my money to the Second Amendment Foundation, but that's okay. I don't leave out GOA. I'm also a member of the Gun Owners of America, as I am other organizations. DefenderCoffee.com, please. It's a simple no-brainer. In today's day and age, you've got Democrats trying to cancel everything. Support the people that support this voice on the airwaves. It is going to be critical in the next 2 years. 4 for sure. Definitely these next 2. It is going to be absolutely vital. They don't want us here. They can't stop us. That's why this microphone, this crossbreed microphone, is so powerful. MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell, man, oh man. I'll tell you what, I've never seen a guy fight so hard in my life. And I'm in touch with MyPillow on a fairly regular basis, at least once or twice a week. MyPillow.com. Support the Second Amendment and this program. If you're going to sleep, and you do, or your pets do, or you want new towels, whatever it is that MyPillow has, visit MyPillow.com, and then in the radio listener special, just click that and click AAR. Send them as gifts. You got the deal, I think, through March, at least through this month. Mike is still doing the deal with the Queen pillows are off like $40 for $29, and the Kings are only $5 more. Use the promo code AAR, get the discount, and the warranty goes through March on those things, okay? Car Arms, of course. This is gunbroker.com, really. If you can't find it in your stores and you can't, Gunbroker's got you covered. Everything there. And guess what? Like everything else, it's free. Gunbroker.com, sign up, and that supports Armed American Radio. Isn't it funny how that works? That's it. Gunbroker will never ask you for a dime, ever. Check out all the auctions. It's extremely addictive. I used to go to news sites. I don't anymore when I'm taking my lunch break. I go right to gunbroker.com. I've been doing it for months now. North American Arms, of course, Car Arms. Front Sight, quickly, we are working on something right now. I cannot give you too many details. Suffice to say, it's probably going to go down in April at Front Sight in Pahrump, Nevada, outside Vegas. And it's going to be a good one. And we're going to be there, and we're going to be broadcasting. And I'll tell you more about it as I know more about it. But for right now, here's what you can do. Visit frontsight.com/Mark. Get the course certificate. If you're an Arizona Citizens Defense League member, I'm a life member, go get the certificate right there so you can have it, because the AZCDL training course is going to be held this year in April. Oh, could it be a coincidence about what I'm talking about? Probably not. I will probably be there with all my peeps from AZCDL, and we're trying to make it even bigger. So simply go and get the certificate. It's 100% free, whether you use it or not. You can keep it forever. You can gift it. You can do whatever you want with it. And like everything else, it doesn't cost you a penny. And Armed American Radio is supported by Front Sight. These people and Dr. Piazza have just put it out there with us. We must support them in these trying times. We have to. There is no other option. Leadslingerswhiskey.com. Serious, how easy is that? The Monstercast is a Lead Slinger's microphone. Put your zip code in, find a distributor near you, and enjoy everything that Brad Primo, as the CEO, combat vet, and supporter of Armed American Radio and good friend of ours, and weekly contributor in the Roundtable, provides you, and you can do it responsibly like a grown adult. And every single bit of this being presented to you by X Insurance. Talk about a great family of partners. Wow, and it's only getting better. Back to the U.S. Senate. The history lesson. So what about today? Why do we talk about Sumner? Why do I keep bringing up the caning of Senator Sumner? Because we are at a point in American history where we have already seen political violence, all of it from the left. They all want to tell you it's coming from the right. That's why they're jumping all over what happened at the Capitol, because a few buffoons made asses of themselves and made 250,000 people look bad. Why? Because the media's in their hip pocket. It just handed it to them on a silver platter. Bunch of idiots, and that's what happened. But in this case, I reminded you that overnight, and I quote, both men became heroes in their respective regions. You heard that correctly. Democrats across America during the antebellum years. For Democrats who don't know what that means pre-Civil War. You can look it up. If you can, I won't tell you how to spell it. You can figure it up on your own. Sound it out. Antebellum. You'll figure it out. But they praised the violent actions of a fellow Democrat against a Republican. What was it Maxine Waters said? What did she say? Let's put that back up. I don't care where you find him. Anybody from this cabinet, in a restaurant, in a department store. What did she say? In a department store, you gather around them, and she's talking about shaming them. That leads to violence. That's inciting violence, isn't it? Why, if Trump said it, it certainly would be, but not if it's Maxine Waters, because, why, she's a socialist, liberal, progressive, Democrat loon. I digress. How bad did it get back then? How revered were these men in their respective camps? Now remember, one was a victim, one was attacked and nearly killed. How bad was it? You ever heard of Brooks County, Georgia? Huh? Yeah, that's how it got its name. The town of Brooksville in Florida. I know Brooksville very well. I lived in Tampa for many, many years. Brooksville, just north of Tampa in Hernando County. Previously, the county seat of Hernando, back in the day, it took its name that year in 1856 in honor of the violence of Brooks's actions against a Republican sitting senator. You heard that correctly. Brooksville, Florida, to this day is named Brooksville because Brooks, the representative, beat the living snot out of Senator Sumner from Massachusetts. And a county in Georgia was named after him. Think about that. Think about that. You heard it correctly. So today, here we are. We face a newly emboldened Democrat Party filled with socialists who now they're drunk on power. They just voted successfully to impeach Donald Trump while we were on the air together today. For a second time. Why? So that Donald Trump can't come back to haunt them and run again. That's why. It's vengeance. The Democrat Party, drunk on power, is now operating on vengeance, trying to silence their political opponents, trying to silence you, half the country. They're trying to silence you with big tech. I've lost over 4,000 Twitter followers already. How the hell's that happen? Right? The number keeps dropping. My Facebook count keeps dropping, just keeps dropping. And that's where we are. Right now, drunk on power, well-known but little discussed piece of history reminds us of where we are. A tale that not only supported slavery and bigotry from the Democrats, but would go on to give the nation some of the most racist laws of all in the form of post-Civil War, gun control, Jim Crow laws. We would be wise to remember people like Kathy Griffin holding a severed head of Donald Trump. That's okay with Twitter and that idiot Jack. Democrat officials calling for mob actions against their Republican counterparts. And let me remind you of this from the U.S. Senate page itself regarding this incident. 2 days later, minutes after the Senate had adjourned for the day, and as Sumner sat at his desk signing his postal frank to envelopes containing the printed speech, a South Carolina House member related to Senator Butler entered the chamber with a heavy cane. The resulting beating galvanized the nation and hastened civil war. Armed American Radio's Daily Defense will do it all again tomorrow. That from the U.S. Senate page, not from me. The resulting beating galvanized the nation and hastened civil war. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you on the radio tomorrow.
You've just filled your prescription for freedom with Mark Walters, presented by X Insurance. X Insurance on the Armed American Radio Network.
See you tomorrow.
That was a great program. Thank you very much. You're spot on with those cues. I appreciate it so much. Thanks, dude. Do you need anything from me, or are we good to cut you loose?
We are good.
Awesome. We'll see you tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
All righty.
Got it. Jim Bartow, we thank him very much. He is a professional. Great program today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Brian says it's amazing that attitude is still alive and strong. It's stronger today. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. When you put in the mix social media that allows the hatred to spew forth, these guys had to talk to each other, or they had to write it in opposing op-eds in newspapers, and it would take days, weeks sometimes to get across the nation. Now, instantaneous because of these evil bastards right here. And that's what they are. That's what they're going to go down as. Mark my word. This technology, this social media, combined with a left-wing controlled 24/7 news cycle, 100% biased in the tank, the downfall of the nation. Mark my word. All right, guys, I got to get the podcast up for you today. I always enjoy covering that story. I think it's a lot of fun, and it's very telling. And where we are today, it's important. Don't be surprised if you hear that on the Monster Cast, where there's 250 radio stations that we can put that out to, because it is a powerful story. And we'll wait and see what happens politically over the coming days and weeks. But Democrats are drunk on power. They're not gonna wait around. They're going to use it, and the media is going to champion everything that they're doing as they attempt to, but they're going to try to wipe out Donald Trump, and they're going to take you along with it. Simply, and I say you. Let me be here. Hard defending a lot of things Trump did over 4 years, but I'm talking about the agenda. That's what we're talking about here, not the man, the agenda. And they're going to try to wipe every bit of it out. Didn't exist. All right, ladies and gents, I'm out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow. Going to be a great remaining 2 days, too. See ya.